Sarcopenia, the scientific term for this progressive loss of muscle mass and function, is possibly one of the most underestimated health problems of our time. While public health campaigns constantly alert us to hypertension, high cholesterol, or osteoporosis, we rarely hear about this condition that profoundly affects our quality of life as we age. And yet, its statistics are alarming. Recent studies suggest that approximately 30% of the population over the age of 60 suffers from some degree of sarcopenia, a figure that increases to 50% after the age of 80. Why should you care? Because sarcopenia isn't just a cosmetic issue of less defined muscles or thinner arms. It's a condition that fundamentally affects your ability to live independently and enjoy life. Imagine for a moment what your day would be like if every movement required a conscious effort, if the everyday tasks you now perform mindlessly became challenges. This is the reality for many people who have ignored the early signs of muscle loss. The symptoms of sarcopenia often appear so gradually that many mistakenly attribute them to normal aging. It begins with subtle signs. You may notice that you need to use your arms to push yourself up out of a deep chair, when before you could do it with just your legs. Or perhaps you notice that carrying grocery bags to the third floor now requires several pauses, when before you could do it without stopping. These small, easily dismissed changes are actually the first warning signs. As the condition progresses, symptoms become more evident. Difficulty maintaining balance may appear, dramatically increasing the risk of falls. And this is where sarcopenia shows its most dangerous face. When weakened muscles cannot adequately protect the bones, a simple fall can result in serious fractures. The statistics are terrifying. Approximately 20% of older adults who suffer a hip fracture die within the first year due to complications. And of those who survive, many never regain their previous level of independence. But perhaps the most insidious aspect of this condition is its domino effect on overall health. Muscles aren't simply instruments of movement. They're metabolically active organs that play crucial roles in blood sugar regulation, energy metabolism, and immune function. When muscle mass decreases, so does our ability to metabolize carbohydrates efficiently, increasing the risk of type 2 diabetes. Simultaneously, basal metabolic rate decreases, facilitating weight gain and the accumulation of visceral fat, known risk factors for cardiovascular disease. But here's the good news, the revelation that will change your perspective. Contrary to popular belief, this muscle breakdown is not an inevitable part of the aging process. While there is a natural tendency toward muscle loss with age, approximately 1 to 2% annually after age 50, the speed and severity of this process are tremendously influenced by modifiable factors: our level of physical activity, our exposure to chronic stress, and crucially, our diet. And it's precisely in this last factor that an uncomfortable truth lies. Certain foods, many of them considered harmless or even healthy in the popular imagination, are silently accelerating this process of muscle breakdown. Through mechanisms that include promoting chronic inflammation, interfering with protein synthesis, hormonal disruption, and mineral imbalance, these foods are compromising the integrity of your muscular system day after day, bite after bite. In recent years, researchers from universities such as Harvard, Stanford, and the National Institute on Aging have published revealing studies linking specific dietary patterns with accelerated rates of muscle loss. The results are consistent and alarming. Individuals who regularly consume certain processed foods, refined sugars, and other elements we will detail in the following chapters show significantly higher rates of sarcopenia than those who follow dietary patterns focused on whole foods, high-quality proteins, and natural antioxidants. What makes this situation particularly worrying is that many of these muscle-destroying foods are deeply embedded in our everyday diets. They're present in traditional breakfasts, quick lunches, convenient snacks, and comforting dinners. They hide behind labels such as low-fat or even energy source while silently compromising the integrity of our muscular system. In the following pages, I'll reveal the 5 main foods responsible for this silent muscle damage. We'll unravel the biochemical mechanisms through which they affect protein synthesis, promote inflammation, and alter the hormonal balances necessary for muscle maintenance. This isn't about demonizing certain foods or promoting extreme restrictions, but rather about providing you with the knowledge you need to make informed decisions about your diet and, by extension, the future of your muscle health. Because ultimately, this knowledge is power. The power to prevent debilitating falls, the power to maintain your independence for years to come, the power to enjoy active and vibrant aging. Sarcopenia may be silent in its early stages, but its consequences are profoundly resonant in terms of quality of life. Fortunately, with the right information and proactive actions, you can rewrite this script and ensure your muscles remain strong, functional, and healthy for many decades to come. Prepare for a revelation that could radically transform your understanding of nutrition and aging. The 5 foods that are destroying your muscles are about to be exposed. The aroma of freshly baked bread is arguably one of the most evocative and universal. A crusty baguette in France, a warm chapati in India, a soft tortilla in Mexico, or a simple toasted slice of bread at any Western breakfast. Bread, in its many forms, is an almost omnipresent presence on dinner tables around the world. For millennia, it has symbolized sustenance, community, and tradition. However, there is a crucial difference between the bread our ancestors consumed and the industrialized product that now dominates our supermarkets and commercial bakeries. Modern bread, especially white bread, and products derived from refined flours has undergone a radical transformation in its nutritional composition. The refining process, which became popular during the Industrial Revolution but reached its peak in the 20th century, strips the grain of its most valuable components. The germ, rich in B vitamins, vitamin E, antioxidants, and essential fatty acids, and the bran, a primary source of fiber, minerals, and protein. What remains is essentially the endosperm, composed primarily of starch and a small amount of protein. This transformation, initially valued for producing flours with a finer texture, greater shelf life, and a cleaner, more uniform appearance, has profound consequences for our muscle health. The bread resulting from these refined flours is no longer the nutritionally dense food that sustained entire civilizations, but a product virtually devoid of essential nutrients, especially those crucial for muscle maintenance and development. But the situation is even more complex. Beyond simply removing nutrients, modern industrial processing insidiously adds potentially harmful elements. Dough improvers, preservatives, bleaches, and other commercial additives not only alter the natural chemical profile of bread, but several studies have suggested they may contribute to systemic inflammation, a key factor in the muscle breakdown associated with sarcopenia. Let's consider for a moment the specific mechanisms by which white bread and other similar refined products compromise our muscle health. The first and most obvious relates to their impact on our blood glucose levels. Due to the lack of fiber and the highly processed nature of the starches present in these products, their consumption causes rapid and pronounced increases in blood sugar. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition showed that the glycemic index of white bread is comparable to that of table sugar, falling between 70 and 75 on the scale, with pure glucose representing 100. These sudden increases in blood sugar trigger equally intense insulin responses. Insulin, the hormone responsible for transporting glucose from the bloodstream into cells, is released in proportionally large amounts to manage these sugar spikes. Although this mechanism is normal and necessary, when it is activated frequently and excessively, as occurs with the regular consumption of refined flours, it begins to cause significant problems. Insulin resistance, a condition in which the body's cells become progressively less sensitive to this hormone, is a common consequence of this dietary pattern. And this is where the link to muscle health becomes especially relevant. Insulin not only regulates glucose metabolism, but also plays a crucial role in muscle protein synthesis. When tissues develop resistance to this hormone, the muscle's ability to incorporate amino acids and build new fibers is significantly compromised. Researchers at the University of Southern California have shown that individuals with increased insulin resistance show reduced rates of muscle protein synthesis in response to protein ingestion compared to those with normal insulin sensitivity. In practical terms, this means that even if you consume enough protein, your ability to effectively utilize it for muscle maintenance and repair will be compromised if your diet is high in refined flours and other high glycemic carbohydrates. But the impact of white bread on muscle breakdown doesn't end with insulin resistance. Another equally important mechanism involves chronic low-grade inflammation. Regular consumption of refined flours promotes a persistent inflammatory state in the body, documented by elevated levels of inflammatory markers such as C-reactive, protein, CRP, pro-inflammatory interleukins, and tumor necrosis factor alpha, TNF-A. This sustained inflammation acts as a silent saboteur of muscle health through multiple pathways. On the one hand, it increases the activity of catabolic pathways mediated by nuclear factor kappa B, NF-κB, responsible for protein breakdown in muscle. On the other hand, it interferes with anabolic pathways controlled by the mammalian target of rapamycin mTOR, essential for the synthesis of new muscle proteins. The net result is a metabolic imbalance that favors muscle breakdown over muscle building. A longitudinal study conducted by researchers at the John Mayer USDA Human Nutrition Research Center at Tufts University followed more than 3,000 participants over a 5-year period, assessing both their dietary patterns and changes in body composition. The results were unequivocal. Those participants with the highest consumption of refined flours showed accelerated muscle loss even after adjusting for factors such as age, sex, physical activity level, and total protein intake. In addition to these direct effects, white bread and other similar refined products exert an indirect impact on muscle health by displacing nutritionally dense foods from our diet. Every slice of white bread, every portion of refined pasta, every cookie or baked good we consume takes up caloric space that could be used for foods rich in high-quality protein, healthy fats, vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants essential for building and maintaining muscle. Consider minerals, for example. Magnesium, essential for more than 300 enzymatic reactions in the body, many of them related to muscle function and energy production, is present in significant quantities in wheat, germ and bran, the very parts removed during the refining process. The same is true for zinc, selenium, and other micronutrients critical for protein synthesis and antioxidant protection of muscle tissue. The lack of these nutrients, combined with the aforementioned negative metabolic effects, creates a perfect storm for accelerated sarcopenia. Your muscles not only face a hostile environment characterized by chronic inflammation and insulin resistance, but they also lack the building blocks necessary for their repair and maintenance. But it's not all bad news. As nutritional science has advanced in understanding these mechanisms, it has also identified viable alternatives that can satisfy our cultural and personal appreciation for bread without compromising muscle health. Genuine whole-grain bread, made with whole grains with both the germ and bran preserved, represents a significantly better option. With a moderate glycemic index between 50 and 55 compared to 70 and 75 for white bread, it elicits much more gradual and sustained glucose and insulin responses. It also maintains its original micronutrient profile, providing magnesium, zinc, B vitamins, and antioxidants important for muscle function. However, it's important to be wary of misleading labels. Many products marketed as whole wheat or multigrain bread contain primarily refined flour with small amounts of whole grains, added primarily for marketing purposes. A rule of thumb is to check the ingredient list. If refined flour appears as the first ingredient, often labeled as enriched wheat flour or simply wheat flour, the product is still predominantly refined, regardless of its color or appearance. Other promising alternatives include breads made with ancient grains, such as spelt, kamut, or einkorn, which tend to have superior nutritional profiles to modern wheat varieties. Naturally fermented sourdough breads also offer significant advantages. The prolonged fermentation process not only partially breaks down gluten and phytates, improving digestibility and mineral absorption, but also lowers the glycemic index of the final product. For those willing to explore beyond Western traditions, there are numerous alternatives based on gluten-free grains such as amaranth, quinoa, or millet, as well as breads made with protein-rich foods such as legumes, which offer exceptional nutritional profiles that are especially beneficial for muscle health. However, the most effective solution may involve a more fundamental re-evaluation of our eating habits, reducing the centrality of bread and other flour products in our diet, favoring less processed carbohydrate sources such as tubers, legumes, and whole grains in their natural form, represents perhaps the approach most aligned with optimizing long-term muscle health. Ultimately, it's not about demonizing a culturally significant food like bread, but rather about understanding its effects on our bodies and making informed choices. Nostalgia for the aroma of freshly baked bread doesn't have to be at odds with maintaining a strong and functional muscular system throughout life. With knowledge, discernment, and some smart adaptations, it's possible to honor both our culinary traditions and the needs of our muscles. The next time you find yourself staring at a basket of bread at a restaurant or in the bakery aisle of the supermarket, remember, every choice counts. Your muscular system is constantly responding to the signals you send it through your diet. Choose wisely, and your muscles will thank you for years to come. Few images evoke the idea of a healthy breakfast as vividly as a glass of freshly squeezed orange juice. For decades, this golden beverage has been promoted as a symbol of vitality, a concentrated source of vitamin C, and an indispensable element of a complete and balanced breakfast. From the iconic advertising campaigns of the 1950s to modern packaging promising 100% natural juice with no added sugar, orange juice has maintained its privileged status as a seemingly unquestionable nutritional choice. However, modern nutritional science is revealing a much more complex and, for many, surprising reality. This seemingly virtuous element of our diet could be significantly contributing to muscle loss, especially in adults over 40. And it's not just orange juice, but a broader category that includes high-fructose fruit juices and certain types of fruit consumed in excess or in specific forms. To understand this nutritional paradox, we first need to examine the biochemical composition of orange juice and other similar juices. A whole orange contains approximately 22 grams of carbohydrates, of which about 12 grams are naturally occurring sugars, primarily sucrose, glucose, and fructose. It also contains approximately 3 grams of dietary fiber, vitamins, minerals, and beneficial phytochemicals such as flavonoids. However, when we squeeze that orange to obtain its juice, we remove virtually all of the fiber while concentrating the sugars. A typical 250 milliliter glass of orange juice contains the sugar equivalent of about 3 or 4 oranges, but virtually none of the original fiber. This means we're ingesting 25 to 30 grams of liquid sugars without the buffering mechanism that fiber normally provides. And this is where the problems for our muscle health begin. The first mechanism through which orange juice and other fructose-rich beverages negatively affect muscles is similar to that explained in the previous chapter: blood glucose dysregulation and resulting insulin resistance. Although the glycemic index of orange juice, approximately 50, is lower than that of white bread, its glycemic load can be significant due to the volume consumed and the lack of fiber,